It's time to check in on that maple wine, see how it's doing. So this was started only about 7 to 8 days ago. September 1st, today's September 8th. So it's very young, but I noticed the airlock activity has slowed down a lot. So let's get a reading and just see where it's at. You know, why not, right? Very, very simple. I have a hydrometer and cylinder. I have the super sucker that was freshly out of turbos and just splashed me yet again. And I'm just going to grab a sample. Lots of gas. Very, very gassy. Not floating. We need more. That's all I got. Are you kidding me?
Houston, we have a problem.
There we go. Wow, right to the top and just barely floating. Now that is one thing that I have noticed is the Herculometer only goes to 0.990. It really doesn't go below that. I mean, it does technically, but this thing went super dry. That's shocking. 0.988. Really?
Do you want me to get the other
Yeah,
hydrometer
we need to
just-
verify this. We're going to verify this number because 988 seems extraordinarily low. Almost like probably can't actually go that low. That would be a pretty high amount of ethanol. But it is possible. Just not something I've encountered before. So we're going to test with a different hydrometer just to give it a check. We do know that these two hydrometers read roughly the same. So,
yeah.
yep. Well, this one's saying 0.990. So I'm going to go with 0.990 just because I feel safer with that. The other one, it was very hard to read. It could have been 990, could have been 988. Not sure. I'm going to go with 990. I feel a little more comfortable with that number. Okay. Now, an interesting note about that. It's very unlikely to go any lower than that. Like, this is done. So we're going to rack it. Why not? We'll do its first rack. That's amazing. 7 days and it's ready to go. I think we need to do a preliminary taste test though, as awful as it may be. As she was getting the glass, Derica said, I don't know why you're tasting this. And I said, because it's what we do for science. We torture our bodies for you people. Just going to do like that much because I don't expect this to be good. Maple wine can be very harsh when it's young, is from what I've been told. I've never made a maple wine before, so this is interesting. I will say this, it's not clear, but I don't expect it to be, okay? It's got a little bit of a haze that will probably go away. 7 days, people, 7 days. On the smell, it's not as rough or green as I thought it would be. Oh, there it is. Yep, a little bit. But it doesn't have a sulfur smell. It just has that very young green smell.
Yeah.
That's difficult to describe. There's no off smell. Okay, that's one thing I want to explain. It just has a slightly more. Wow, I can't even describe it. It's a mildly bitter, unpleasant smell. I can't even really describe it. It doesn't smell like anything you've ever encountered. It's not vinegary. It's almost acidic smelling.
Yeah.
That's the best way to describe it.
It's like fresh grass with lemon.
Yeah. Let me take a little taste. That is possibly the driest thing I've ever put in my mouth, as far as brew goes. But it's not the most unpleasant at this age or that dryness that I've ever had. Don't get me wrong, I am not loving this right now. I think it needs a lot to get where I want it to be. Mostly thyme and a little bit of sweetening with more maple syrup. But that's impressive. It's actually not bad.
For 7 days? Heck yeah.
It's not bad. Don't get me wrong, this is not like, you don't want to drink this right now. You really don't. But it's not like horrible. Okay, let's say that. It's not horrible. Let's figure out the alcohol content though, because I think it's actually rather high. So we started at 1.088 minus 0.990 gives us 98 points of gravity used up times 135 gives us 13.2% ABV. Not too shabby. That's under the limit for 71B though, so I don't really want to take a risk. I don't really want to make more alcohol. We will back sweeten and do the thing as we progress on, but for now, let's get this racked and into the pitcher, degassed, and move on. By the way, when I said pitcher, I meant fermentation vessel because there's no need to put it in the pitcher this time. I am going to take this sample and pour it in here though, because if I put it in there, I could splash and make problems. In here, it's much easier to just pour it very carefully. Everything has been sanitized.
It'll also disrupt the Lee's cake.
Yeah. And if, like she said, if I had poured it in there, it would disrupt the Lee's, making it cloudy, and then I really don't want to rack it today, because now it's all nice and compacted. We want to get it off of that and into here. By the way, the whole Lee's thing. I've been told that Lee's is the correct word. I've been saying lease as long as I've known the word. So I'm going to try to say lease. But if I say lease, please don't just torture me for it, okay? Yeah. All right, so we're going to rack. And I'm going to use the cap on the end of this. You've seen us rack before, and if you haven't, we have an entire video on how to rack your brew. So we're not going to go into too much detail. Instead, I'm just going to rack it.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di
All right, so now that we have it racked, put the lid and the airlock back in it. And let's just talk for a minute about Headspace. People have been really asking a lot of questions about Headspace, and I think we may have put too fine a point on it. It's important, but it's not the end all. If you look at this, it's all the way up to here. That is totally fine. You just want to minimize headspace. Like, you don't want it to be down here, okay? That's just a lot of air that can come in contact with it, and that can cause problems. Now, this is already 12%. It's unlikely to go to vinegar at this point. It's more likely to be oxidized if it got too much oxygen, which just can cause some off flavors down the road. Can. It doesn't always, okay? Just can. Some people actually prefer it, like sherries and things like that actually have those oxidized flavors built in. But you don't generally want to add them if you don't have to. That's a good amount of headspace. If you're down here, it's still okay. It's not great, but it's okay. If you're unsure, in primary racking, we have not degassed. I didn't stir it up or anything like that. So I'm going to give this a little bit of a swirl, and look at that. See all the gases coming out? That solves your headspace problem. People you got to be careful with the wide mouth fermenters because they leak. You know, the lids don't sit on there totally perfect if you don't crank it down real good. So let me just give that a little bit of a shake. Yep, there we go. People ask about like there's sprays you can use that are different gases and whatnot to fill it. Of course you can if you really want to. I prefer not to. Why not just use what's already there, the CO2 that's already in the brew itself, because it's heavier than the oxygen. It forces the oxygen out, sits as a blanket up on top of there. Nothing's going to go wrong. Everything's good. It'll naturally degas on its own. So what are we going to do with this?
We're going to let it sit.
Well, let it sit till it clears out. Might be a week, might be a couple weeks, might be a month. Who knows? Once this gets pretty clear, or I just can't wait any longer, we'll be back with an update. So it's been 13 days. Let's see how this is doing. When last we saw it, it was at 0.990. Is it still at 0.990? Has it gone down? Has it gone up? Which would be really weird, but it is not outside of the realm of possibility. It smells oddly like maple syrup. Shocking. Whoops.
Yeah, sanitizer. Sorry.
Yeah, there's sanitizer liquid all over it. We have come up with a new name. This is formerly known as the Todd, now called Megamade. Some of you will understand the reference. Oh, we got some gassiness in here, which is to be expected. I mean, this was started September 1st. Today's September 21st, so this is precisely 3 weeks old to the day. It's actually looking pretty clear for 3 weeks old. Yeah. Shockingly enough, it is 0.990 yet again. Let me just pour off a little bit of this into a glass so we can take a quick sample. And we're going to rack this today because I believe it's done. But let me, yeah, if it's at 0.990 twice after 13 days, it's totally done. So let me put this into the pitcher of racking. Pour? Ha! It's pour, the pitcher of racking. How funny is that? We're all about the acronyms here, folks. The sillier, the better sometimes. But there's barely any sediment in this. There's barely any lees in the bottom. I think that's really interesting. But we are going to rack it to that pitcher and then put it right back into this fermenter right after we get a quick taste of it and a smell.
So you see me smirking. There's
boy.
reasons for that.
It's actually pretty clear, guys. Let me show you the card test. I don't know what her reaction was, but I'm betting you it's probably pretty good. Look at that. 3 weeks old, and it's kind of clear already. And this was maple syrup, black tea, and lemon juice with 71B and a little bit of Fermaid O. This is the first time we've used Fermaid O that it went clear.
Yeah, normally it stays cloudy, so go team.
There's something odd in the smell. I don't quite get it.
What is your brain telling you?
I get blackberries.
I get bacon.
Oh, wow. It's the maple.
Yeah, I know.
Now that you're saying that, I do too.
I get bacon. Bacon!
Yeah, totally. Wow, that's dry. Yep. That's dry. I got goosebumps. That's not a good thing, by the way. It's not like, ooh, I'm excited. It's more of a, ooh, boy, that is dry. I mean, it's 0.990, you know, like it's dry. That's about as dry as a brew can get.
I am getting kind of the smoky saltiness
Yeah.
on the end.
Yeah, a little
bit.
That maple syrup
It's
had a little
bacon.
bit of a smoky
Bacon.
thing to it. You can finish that. So 13%.
I'm not really getting any of that alcohol flavor at all.
No, not really at all. But 13%, that's pretty respectable.
Sure.
I'm going to say we're going to end up back sweetening this. There's almost no way I can let this go the way it is. I want more maple flavor. I do get a little bit, but not enough. And it's really dry. I mean, it made me go, make that face.
It didn't make me make that face, but I could appreciate wanting to have more sweetness.
Absolutely.
But that said, I wouldn't want a different sweetness. I would want more of the maple sweetness.
Yes, we're going to add maple syrup when we do back sweeten. But for today, we're just going to rack it to the pitcher and rack it back to this fermenter. So, and due to the magic of TV, you're just going to see us cut to when this is refilled again, slightly less. But we do have videos on how to rack if you wanted to watch those. Link right up in here. So go watch that. We'll be back in a minute. All right, so we racked it to the pitcher with the raised numbers on it, and it comes out to about, looks like 116 or so ounces. So we're just going to wash out this fermenter and reuse it. And that's something that you can do. You can use a pitcher for the interim racking and then put it right back into that same fermenter. That way you don't have to have two fermenters. Totally cool to do that.
So I'm going to wash this in our sink to make sure all that gunk goes down the drain rather than into our bucket of sanitization. And then after I'm done washing it, I'm going to re-sanitize it before we put this back in.
Yes, I neglected to say that. Okay, so we racked it and put it back in. I have the airlock affixed with the lid. And as you can see, it's past the curve in the neck, so we don't have too much headspace to worry about. But I do want to give it that little bit of a shake. See if I can get some. Yep, there we go. Get a little bit of gas to come out. Pushes all that oxygen out of it, creating a nice blanket of CO2, and it just helps the brew to clear a little bit, getting rid of that CO2, and it makes it taste a little bit better too. So, there's a lot of reasons to degas at this point. It's a good idea. And just be careful with these plastic lids, because I just made it spill all over the place. It's what I do.
It is.
So this is going to go sit in the area of fermentation, the fermentation station, if you will, for probably a week. Today is, what day of the week is today? Today's Tuesday. So yeah, probably next Tuesday or Wednesday, we will rack and bottle this. We'll see you then.
So it's been 8 days, and now it's time to rack to the pitcher, bottle, take a taste, and see what else we might need to do.
So, as always, the first thing is take the lid off. Now, you might be wondering, why aren't you taking a reading? There's really no reason to. This was 0.990 2 times in a row, and that's 8 days ago it did that. So I don't feel the need to take another reading. However, on the smell, I'm getting maple syrup already, which is really impressive. There is almost no sediment in the bottom of this jar. That is encouraging for me. So I'm going to take the cap off and just take the siphon that was fresh out of turbos and run that inside it. Now, even though there's almost no sediment, I still don't want to go all the way to the bottom when I start it. So I just do this to get it started, and then I'll drop it to the bottom. But I mean, I can see the bottom of the jar, and there's like nothing there. we're racking it to a pitcher. Do you have to do that? No. But that little bit, if there's anything in there, I don't want that in my bottles. So because we're going to be doing some back sweetening, which is also going to degas this a bit, I'm going to be stirring it all up. I didn't want to add extra sediment if we didn't need to.
I believe the reason why we let this sit at the additional 8 days in the first place is because it was cloudy after taking that second reading. If it wasn't cloudy, we probably would have gone straight to bottling and back sweetening and all that jazz then, because we had our 2 readings in a row that were the same number.
Further proof that time heals all brews. This was cloudy. Now it's not. It's actually very nicely cleared. I'm quite pleased with that. We have had problems where when we use yeast hulls and ferment dough, where things didn't seem to clear. Now, that's a theory. It's a working theory. We don't have proof that that is the case, but it just seemed like every time we used them, things were a little bit cloudier than we really wanted them to be. This one cleared, so maybe that theory is disproven. So now that it's racked, we want to be very careful with it that we don't introduce oxygen, but we also want to take a taste, because this is when we do the final adjustments, if you will. So we're going to pour a taste here, and let me do the white card test. Check that out. I mean, put your hand behind that glass. So right away on the smell, it smells like maple syrup. It doesn't really smell of alcohol much, which is kind of impressive. This is 13% alcohol and 0.990. This is very, very dry. But that smells like maple syrup.
It reminds me of bacon.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think it's the smoky notes from the wood. That is not a poker face, ladies and gentlemen.
I've never liked 0.990. That's not bad. It needs some age. Definitely needs some age. I think I want to sweeten it. I want to add a little bit of sweetness to it. It tastes a little dry to me, but overall, that's really good.
It is hard to determine if what's missing is actually more sweetness or simply aging. I think sweetness certainly wouldn't hurt, but for something that dry,
I want more maple flavor.
My reaction isn't, oh my goodness, we need sweetness.
Didn't flip out tasting that.
No.
That's why I don't think we need a lot. I think we need a little bit. Like maybe a quarter pound or a half pound of maple syrup poured into this would probably be plenty. I mean, just raise the gravity a few points. Maybe get it to, I don't know, 1.000. Something like that might be probably a good idea. But really what I want is I want the taste to match the smell. I smell maple syrup. I don't taste as much. A little bit. But it's not unpleasant at all. It's actually quite nice. Now I'm getting the heat. As I exhale, I'm getting the alcohol. I totally can taste the alcohol now. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the same maple syrup that we put in it. That, by the way, people warned us that if we didn't refrigerate it, it would mold. Especially since we're in Florida, we keep our house at 79 degrees. Our friend Kenny, who said that he doesn't, lives in Canada, where his house is probably 50 degrees. That's Fahrenheit, not Celsius. That would be very hot. So it's probably already slightly chilled there. So yeah, we decided to let's just err on the side of better judgment. And we put it in, Derica put it into some mason jars, and it's now hanging out in the fridge.
Do you want the scale, or are you just going to eyeball it?
No, I'm going to eyeball it. And here's why. It doesn't really matter how much I put in. I know I have roughly half a mason jar here, which is is a quart. So I have half a quart. I'm probably not going to use all that. I'm just going to put some in.
And you at home are probably going, what do you mean it doesn't matter how much you put in? How am I going to be able to follow along? And that's a good question. But the reason why it doesn't really matter is because our level of sweetness appreciation is going to be different than your level of sweetness appreciation. And so you need to follow this format where you just add a little at a time and keep taking tastings until it gets to where you like it. Because you're going to drink it, so you need to like it, not
Flavor
us.
is very biased, and many people have said, oh, that's way too sweet for me. And other people have said that that's too dry for them, no matter what level we made them. We actually had one guy that he was saying his wines are coming out at 0.996 and they're too sweet for him. Okay, like way too sweet. I'm like, I don't understand that one because that's pretty dry. There's not really any sugars left there. But okay, if that's what he said, that's what he said. You know, it's his perception. So who am I to say he's wrong? He's not. So we've come to the idea that it really doesn't matter how much sweetness we add. As long as we like it, it's all good. So you add till you like it. And I just stirred that up. I don't know if I stirred it well enough. Did I? I didn't put much in. I probably put in about a cup of it. So not a tremendous amount, just enough to add a little bit of flavor, a little bit of sweetness to it. My concept is I want to use as little sweetener as I need to get it to taste the way I want it and taste enjoyable for me. Because I'd rather have just the right amount than go, I wish it was a little sweeter. But if I add too much now, as this ages and mellows, it'll probably be way too sweet down the line. We don't want that. Oh, that's a little more generous pour than I really wanted. It's actually maintaining its clarity too, even with the maple syrup being added, which is interesting. Definitely smells more like maple syrup now. Ooh. That's pretty good. But you know me, I can never do just... I think it needs just a touch more. Not much.
It could,
less than I put in.
It could be it needs... Well, here, let me finish that for you.
Mm-hmm.
It could be that it needs a little bit more, or it could simply be that it needs some more time.
I'm still going to put in a little bit more.
It needs more time, but both of our palates tends to appreciate things on the sweeter side. So it won't
a
hurt.
Little oversweet isn't going to be a problem.
Yeah.
I didn't want to dump in the whole thing. I probably only put in... I mean, geez, if that's 32 ounces is a quart, 16 ounces would be half a quart. That's what was there. I might have put in 5, maybe 6 ounces of this. I did not put in much. Now that's by volume, not by weight. We'll just take one last taste test on this, and then we're going to get to bottling. And that's really all we do to back sweeten. It's not any super complex idea. You just want to get it to where you like it. And make sure you mix it through. That's really important. We're also degassing a bit in doing this, but this one's been sitting long enough. There's really not much gas in here. And degassing is important before you bottle so that you don't build up any pressure in the bottles and explode them and things like that. It also gets rid of nasty, harsh flavors, and it just overall helps the brew to taste a little bit better. Now, I always make the joke when I re-smell something after back sweetening or doing that. I say, oh, it smells the same. This does not. Because we're adding something that has a flavor and aroma component that is changing it as a sweetener. And that's interesting. We normally use something that's more or less neutral. Even honey is a little bit on the neutral side for that. This is not a neutral smell or flavor.
Because it has the sweetness, but it also has an additional smokiness to it. So
that's good. That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a nice mouthfeel to it already. There's not a lot of tannins to it. There's a little bit of acidity. That brightness is there. It's got the sharpness of the lemon juice. Definitely, I don't taste lemon juice, but I can taste that little bit of acidity to it. And the maple syrup with that little bit of smokiness. This is really nice. Yeah. I'm actually really impressed with this.
Yeah, that was good.
I think we're spot on though. Any more, and I think it might be too sweet down the line, but this just needs some time to mellow. And I think just a couple months is going to be huge, but the 1 year, this is going to be amazing.
So now that we are satisfied with our flavor profile, it's time to bottle. But because we did back sweeten, it is crucially important for us to pasteurize after we're done bottling.
We've done a couple of videos on pasteurization, and it's a long process. So rather than make this video go 3.5 hours or 4 hours, much to some people's chagrin, we're going to omit the pasteurization part when we get to that, and just instead point you to our videos on pasteurization, knowing that that's what we did. So we got 7 full bottles and 1 empty. And I have an explanation for that. When they say 16 ounces, they probably mean like to here in the neck. So every one of these is filled a little bit more, and I had just a little bit left at the end, so the last couple are filled a little further up into the neck. And that's probably where that extra few ounces went. Not a big deal. It just means, okay, so you're getting a little more than 16 ounces in a bottle. And yeah, we're using beer bottles, because are they really beer bottles, or are they just 16-ounce glass bottles? These never had beer in them. Actually, these may have had beer in them. I don't know.
Some of them had beer in them. Some of them were brand new.
Oh, well, look at that. But we've put other stuff in these before. So does that make them brew bottles or beer bottles?
It just makes them amber 16-ounce bottles.
Yeah.
Swing top.
Somebody asked me the other day about amber versus clear. I don't really have a preference. We keep our stuff more or less in the dark, so it's not really a problem. The idea is, for beer at least, if you keep it in an amber bottle, it's harder for it to get skunked, which is basically when sunlight gets to it. But if you keep it in relatively not bright conditions and not in direct sunlight, it shouldn't happen anyway. So the color isn't all that critical, my opinion. Some people will disagree. For beer, as far as for wines and meads, I haven't really found any evidence that there's much difference, to be honest. We just use these because it's what we had available. We might have run out of wine bottles. I think we're getting heavy on stock, so that means we have to start having Terry drink more. But anyway, so that's the gist. Now, these are all going to go into pasteurization, which simply means we're going to raise the internal temperature to 140 degrees. Now, not super high temperatures, 140 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 to 20 minutes. That kills the yeast, making it dormant. Well, not dormant, making it dead. So that way it cannot further ferment and we won't get bottle bombs. If we did not pasteurize this, they would explode. This will continue fermenting. So if you go and follow exactly what we did here and back sweeten, make sure you pasteurize. I can't stress that enough. It's really dangerous. There was enough extra added here that it won't just carbonate. It could explode.
And for those of you who are confused and say, but hey, you took 2 readings and they were the same, so it's done. That's true, however, we added sugar then afterwards by adding more maple syrup.
Yep.
So because we added that after it was done, all bets are off, and those little yeasties that are still floating around in there could be munching away on that
They don't know they're supposed to be done.
Sugar.
So we're going to get this into a pasteurizer and get that taken care of. But we're going to end the video here because, like I said, we have other videos on that. But hey, if you like this video, look up. There's another video up there. You might like that one too.
Thanks for watching.
Have a great day.